I asked you all for the match, storyline, or moment that made you almost or actually quit watching WWE, and here are your answers. Just want to point out that I'm going to try and make more series like this, which is more interactive for you all to give me your answers or your opinions on things, so stay tuned for more. The Fiend versus Seth Rollins in Hell in a Cell. No matter what platform I looked on, this was the top comment I always saw. It was the main one that I saw 1,000 times. Fiend versus Seth Rollins in Hell in a Cell was the moment that somebody either A, walked away from WWE or almost did. And I'll be honest, it's completely understandable. Even before this match had started, fans were a little bit skeptical about how WWE was going to go out of this because Seth Rollins was still too early into his reign to want to take the title off of him. The Fiend was still brand new. It felt weird to immediately push him to the title picture. Not to mention the fact that I did not even think there was a world where the Fiend was going to lose one of his early matches. So why are we booking this match? An easy out to this one could have been, the Fiend just goes so over the top and just taking out Seth Rollins, like maybe the outside of the ring, that he ends up getting disqualified. But no, they made it a Hell in a Cell match, so they had absolutely no way of booking themselves out of this except a no contest finish. Fans in the crowd booed mercilessly. They were screaming. They wanted their money back. Fans were not happy, and I completely agree with them. While I didn't walk away from WWE in this situation, it definitely really hurt my fandom in WWE because it was like, now Seth was going to be hated for this, and he was getting booed, of course, and that's tough because Seth was the babyface champion, and, the Fiend was just never going to feel the same, and that was a common trend throughout his time in WWE, where WWE builds him up an insane amount just to blow it in the big moment. And once again, most of the 2010s was not great for WWE. 2019 here was not good, in my opinion, and I've actually put out a video about why I didn't think it was good. And yeah, like I said, valid reason to walk away. Next up is anytime Goldberg came back to squash anyone, Brock, The Fiend, Kevin Owens, etc. I'm going to start off by saying I don't fully disagree with this, but I definitely don't fully agree with it either. Because when Goldberg initially made his comeback and squashed Brock Lesnar, it was one of the most exciting, insane moments for us WWE fans that we had seen in a very long time. Because no one, and I mean no one, had ever humbled Brock Lesnar like that. And you just suspended your belief for a second where you talk about how the reason Goldberg probably squashed everybody was because he just couldn't do long matches. You suspended that and you just watched and you were just excited to see him just come back, squash Brock like that. And even though you knew Brock was probably going to get the win in the series in the long run, he was going to get the big moment at WrestleMania against him, that was fine. In this moment, it was awesome. But everything after that is where I do agree with you, at least for the most part. Because when he squashed Kevin Owens for the Universal Championship, sure, it might have been a big pop at the time, but us WWE fans looking back on that really regret that that decision was made because I wish Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens' match at WrestleMania was for the Universal Championship. But instead, no, that went to Brock Lesnar and Goldberg at WrestleMania, which I don't think was necessary. But I really think everything hit its boiling point when Goldberg squashed The Fiend. That was one of the worst decisions, in my opinion, in wrestling history. Not even WWE history, wrestling history. Having Goldberg beat The Fiend, stupidest decision ever. And that was a moment that turned a lot of fans against Goldberg because it was like, oh, The Fiend is going to stand up afterwards and he's still going to look like a dominant presence. No, because you guys botched The Fiend so many times that now fans don't take The Fiend character seriously. But overall, Goldberg did have some fun squash matches later on that I don't think were bad options. Like, for example, I actually enjoyed the Dolph Ziggler squash match just because Dolph Ziggler sells everything so well. When he took that spear and he just flailed his body, it was one of the funniest things. So yeah, I don't think every Goldberg squash match was a bad idea. I just think there was a long stretch in between the first and then one of the last where it was just like, why are we still having him come back and squash people? And it had to do with the contract that Vince McMahon gave him where he would show up on select dates, specifically at Saudi Arabia, and, they would want him to win because Goldberg was a valuable presence in WWE history, and world wrestling history because he was more in WCW, and they don't want to make him look weak by having him lose to pretty much everybody and put everybody over. So Alex, to your comment, I pretty much 50% agree and 50% disagree. The next comment said, honestly, I quit watching back around 2013 because I felt like the storylines were super lazy and we were tired of seeing Cena and Orton, even though Orton was my favorite. First of all, I agree with you in that case. Randy Orton is also my favorite, so I get it. But at the same time, I don't know if the over pushing of Cena and Orton was enough to make me want to walk away, but trust me, you're not the only fan that has said this. But for me, I could never get enough of Randy Orton. Randy Orton is my favorite of all time. I love seeing him. The Cena fatigue for sure was up there because this was Super Cena, you know. We had Randy Orton winning the Money in the Bank and cashing in on Daniel Bryan after Triple H pedigreed him, and yeah, that bothered me because I was, you know, becoming a huge Daniel Bryan fan at the time, and it was a lot, you know. I think there was a huge element of Cena fatigue, and for me, just because I love Randy Orton, it wasn't as bad, but I could also see there being a lot of Orton fatigue. But looking back on it, I think it was the right decision to have Cena and Orton win certain titles over that time, because now we're just this much closer to them getting that additional world title and becoming, you know, the number one superstar with the most world title reigns in the company. So Cena and Orton wouldn't be where they are right now. They wouldn't have the same level of prestige. They wouldn't have this record chasing if they didn't win those titles during those eras. But also, I do really get your point, because at this time there were a lot of young superstars who could be getting pushed, and yeah, instead we were picking the two old guys that have been a part of this company for years on years. And, you know, 2013 WWE was also a little bit iffy in its own part. Remember Lord Tensai? Let's try not to remember. Let's get to the next comment. Brazilian J said every time they made the draft meaningless. Off the rip, I'm just going to say I don't agree that this was enough to make me want to quit wrestling, but it definitely made me take WWE, specifically these drafts, way less serious. Because when I was a kid, I used to get excited for the WWE draft. We were about to get some big movement. I remember like Rey Mysterio was moving shows, Chris Jericho would move shows, you know, and those were huge superstars at the time. So yeah, it was big moments. This specific moment right here, and I picked this one specifically because this is when I learned that the WWE draft is all just one giant joke to them. It's all to make Vince McMahon laugh. When John Cena got drafted to SmackDown, my heart completely dropped. And then later that night, they draft him back to Raw, wasting 2 draft picks. And yes, the more I think about it, the more enraged I get. Like, once again, it wasn't enough to make me want to leave or quit watching WWE, but I stopped taking the draft seriously, and I still don't take it seriously to this day. No matter how hard the WWE tries to pretend their draft is like the NFL draft, where, oh my God, you know, what's going to happen? This guy could go here, that guy could go there. The draft is pretty much pointless because it's all predetermined. Yes, it's all predetermined who's going to go where, and the champions are excluded. So it's like, what are you really going to get that's this crazy decision? What's the biggest move you're going to get? Some middle tier superstar that you probably already know is going to get traded because of leaks and rumors, and then they go to the other brand. It's like, okay, cool, whatever. I don't really take it seriously. And maybe I should, because WWE's most recent draft was pretty solid, but like I said, champions not being included kind of just makes it like whatever to me. So Brazilian, trust me, I get your point and I understand the frustration, but it wasn't enough for me to walk away from WWE. Next up was from Bailey, who said, I quit because Dean Ambrose left. This is obviously valid if your favorite wrestler is Dean Ambrose and now Jon Moxley. It was never really that big of a deal for me. I mean, no offense to Dean, I did like Dean Ambrose, but he was my least favorite member of The Shield, and that was even when Roman Reigns was getting booed like crazy. It always went Seth, Roman, then Dean for me, and yeah, I mean, if Dean Ambrose is your favorite, I get it. But it was never that serious for me, because listen, Jeff Hardy was my favorite superstar my entire childhood, and when he left WWE, I didn't stop watching WWE. I just, you know, kept watching the people I did like. I grew a new favorite. Randy Orton became my favorite, but like I said, to each their own. Everyone can have their own reason for leaving. I just don't think because like my favorite superstar leaves, now I gotta give up the company. I get it. It's more of like, now I have less of a reason to watch, and then maybe you kind of just grow out of WWE. Patrick said, when Drew beat CM Punk. Come on, this was the right decision when it happened. Drew had way more of a reason to win that match than CM Punk. This is basic long-term storytelling. I mean, we don't get a result that we're happy about. A heel beats a babyface and you're ready to quit? I mean, you can't do that, man. Come on. But listen, like I said, to each their own, but I feel like this was one of those moments where you probably didn't really want to quit watching WWE. It was just a moment where you watched maybe your favorite superstar and CM Punk lose to one of the guys that you really don't like right now, Drew McIntyre, and you got angry because you just saw your favorite lose and you're just like, I'm done with WWE. For me, I was very happy with this first decision because then it makes the second match even better and it's going to make their third match the best. Next up, Average Sports Guy said, when Raw had the guest celebrity general managers each week, it made wrestling feel like a joke. Out of every single comment that I received on all of my platforms, and out of all the ones that I've picked, this is by far my favorite choice. Because I think this is one of the most valid reasons to actually step away from watching WWE, because at this point it felt like things were less about WWE and wrestling and the performers involved and more about just trying to basically clip farm with all these famous celebrities and, you know, get funny, cool moments with all these popular actors and actresses. And it felt like, yeah, WWE was more focused on entertainment than actually focused on the world wrestling part. So when I saw this comment, my eyes lit up because I was just reminded when I was a kid, you know, just turning on WWE, and weekly you had all these different hosts that you just never understood why they were there or what they were doing. And the biggest problem looking back on it was most of them didn't really care about WWE. None of them really cared about wrestling at all or really understood it. They always had those little backstage gimmick moments that were supposed to make fans laugh, but most of the time it was just a disrespect to what we were watching. And that was the biggest problem. It just felt like a disrespect to us fans who tune in weekly to watch great wrestling, not to see some random celebrity show up and make a match of their choosing, which makes no sense, but it'll be funny in the end of the day. Out of all the options, this is easily the number one for me that would have caused me to walk away. The difference was I was too young to really understand the issues with this, so I just watched WWE Weekly and didn't really care about all the co-hosts, just, you know, kept watching it. But if I watched it now, yeah, things would have probably been a little bit different. And I don't know if I would have had the same passion to watch WWE that I do now. Last him said, Brock Lesnar winning Money in the Bank and Ali standing there in shock. This is, to this day, my least favorite moment in WWE history. Now, don't try to bring up 1,000 other moments that'll probably be substantially worse than the one I'm listing. I'm just going based off of this because I watched this live and I legitimately turned off my TV in anger and frustration like never before with wrestling. Now, the Brock winning part is most certainly enough of a reason for me to stop taking wrestling as seriously as I did at the time, and it was definitely a somewhat valid reason to walk away. But the part that drives me the most crazy is Ali just standing on that ladder, holding the briefcase for a solid 8 to 9 seconds before Brock busts his way into the ring, decks a cameraman by swinging the ladder to the side, comes in, knocks Ali down, and ends up winning the Money in the Bank when he wasn't even in the match. Because Ali just standing up there, holding the briefcase between his hands, in just utter shock that he was looking at Brock Lesnar. I know this is all, you know, it's all scripted. He probably just went up there a little bit too early because, dude, it really made wrestling feel fake. In all honesty, that's what it did. It made wrestling feel like this is the dumbest, fakest BS I've ever watched. And very similar to the draft, this was a time for me where I stopped taking the Money in the Bank seriously either, because I felt like WWE was just giving it to somebody that they could just check box off instead of actually giving it to somebody who could eventually become a world champion, you know, giving it to a guy, let's just say like Gunther. They have been giving the recent memory, they've been giving the Intercontinental and US championships to people who they want to end up pushing the world title scene, when meanwhile they should probably be using the Money in the Bank for that instead of just furthering storylines. That's off topic though. The whole point here is that Brock didn't need the Money in the Bank. He didn't. He's going to win championships. He gets championship opportunities just for showing up in the door. Vince McMahon would call him and say, hey, Brock, show up, get millions of dollars, and win a title, and then leave. And that was what he would do. So winning this Money in the Bank was just such a dumb cop-out call. And the whole Ali situation, he wasn't even in the match. It disrespected my mind. I know that didn't make any sense, but just bear with me. I'm angry. That's going to be it for your reasons of why you stopped watching WWE or almost did. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Peace!